Audit sampling is a technique used by auditors to select a representative subset of data or transactions for testing purposes when conducting audits. It allows auditors to gather sufficient evidence to form conclusions about the population being audited without examining every single item. Here's how to select samples for testing and audit sampling. Understand the population. Identify the population of items or transactions that are subject to audit testing. Understand the characteristics, size, and distribution of the population to determine the appropriate sampling approach. Define audit objectives. Clarify the audit objectives, scope, and criteria to determine the specific types of tests to be performed and the level of assurance required. Choose sampling method. Select the appropriate sampling method based on the audit objectives, population characteristics, and risk considerations. Common sampling methods include statistical sampling, judgmental sampling, systematic sampling, random sampling, and stratified sampling. Determine sample size. Calculate the sample size needed to achieve the desired level of assurance and reliability based on statistical principles, risk factors, and confidence intervals. Consider factors such as population size, variability, materiality thresholds, tolerable error rates, and sampling precision. Select sampling frame. Define the sampling frame, which is the list or source from which samples will be drawn. Ensure that the sampling frame is comprehensive, accurate, and representative of the entire population. Randomize selection. Randomly select samples from the sampling frame to ensure that every item in the population has an equal chance of being selected. Use random number generators, computerized sampling tools, or random selection techniques to ensure randomness and avoid bias. Document sampling methodology. Document the sampling methodology, including the sampling method used, sample size determination, sampling frame, and sampling technique. Provide rationale for the selection of sampling parameters, such as confidence levels, error rates, and risk factors. Perform testing. Conduct audit testing on the selected samples according to the predetermined audit procedures, criteria, and testing objectives. Document audit findings, observations, exceptions, and deviations identified during testing. Evaluate results. Evaluate the results of the audit testing to determine whether the sampled items are representative of the entire population. Assess the sufficiency and reliability of the evidence obtained from the samples to draw conclusions about the population being audited. Extrapolate findings. Extrapolate audit findings from the sample to the entire population based on the principles of audit sampling. Consider the nature and significance of exceptions identified in the sample when extrapolating findings to the population. Consider additional testing. Consider the need for additional testing or expanded audit procedures based on the results of initial sampling and testing. Adjust sample size or sampling approach as necessary to address any deficiencies or uncertainties identified during testing. By following these steps, auditors can select samples for testing effectively, gather sufficient audit evidence, and form conclusions with confidence about the population being audited.